Welcome to Nightmare Echoes. This is your host, Elazar. Today I'm joined by Michael Yammine. He's the producer, writer, and director of the new movie called Reset that just came out this week. You could find it on VOD and streaming. So today we're going to go about it. Michael, welcome, first of all. Can you tell me a little
Yeah.
bit about the movie?
Oh, yeah. The film focuses around Lucas, the main character, who is a father who his daughter gets taken by another worldly force, and he's sort of stuck in this nightmare trying to bring her back. And yeah, yeah, it's
Great. Okay. So I got to see it. So thank you for that. I want to say
awesome.
one of the best parts of it was that the film looked beautiful to me. Everything, the environment looked vast, the creatures are well designed, and the imagery itself is just beautiful. How do you
Thank you.
accomplish that on an indie film budget?
Um, I think what's important is if you're going to write a film, know what you have available to you. So, for instance, that property we shot on was my uncle's property. So, logistically, I knew what I had available to me. So, I structured the film entirely around all his land and his beautiful home and his post-apocalyptic looking barn.
Yeah,
And so, having that access helped me know beforehand visually what direction I wanted to go in and how I could achieve that practically without losing my mind.
that's awesome. Were there any scenes that were challenging to film, either technically or emotionally?
From a technical standpoint, a lot of the nighttime stuff was a challenge because we were shooting in during the winter time. And although you don't always see snow or anything, you're talking, we were shooting in November and when it was cold, it was really cold. So nighttime stuff was a challenge because everyone's uncomfortable. And I wanted to I wanted to really lean into low lighting schemes versus doing day for night or overlighting and bringing everything down. So we tried to keep it very simple when it came to the lighting process, but also as effective as possible. So the challenges there were mostly with a lot of the nighttime action sequences because we had multiple creatures, but we actually only had one creature. So
Okay,
there's a lot of movie magic of trying to remember where, where everything was happening, everybody's eye line, where this creature's going, where this gunshot's going, all that jazz. So it was such a challenge, but it was so fun discovering like what was going to work and what wasn't working for us.
so you brought up the creature. I liked that it always looked wet or moist? Like, how did
Mhm.
you accomplish that? Who built the creature?
It's actually Jesse Jabor from Jabor Effects. He's my makeup effects guy. And early on, before we even started filming, I was talking to him about how I wanted the creature to look. And I said, you know, we have to stray away from latex. We have to stray away from just any material that could bend and look just like you call it out. I said, it's got
Sure.
to be strictly silicone. We have to find a way to make this happen because that's the one of the bigger selling points visually is that you want a creature people can actually be afraid of
Right.
and it doesn't take you away from the film. And what was important too was that the jaw could move and like anything regarding movement was sellable. So the creature design we talked about, and I said, I want this to be this like demonic looking, otherworldly creature. I don't want to see any pupils. I want there to just be like it's so hollow,
Sure.
it's pure evil. And
Right.
we accomplished that at a team effort. I mean, him and I, there was some trial and error and stuff. And as far as the glossy look, I believe he painted it with this clear coat. And I said I
Okay.
want to almost appear translucent with lighting and stuff because when we do low lighting stuff as well, I wanted people to be able to see the creature even in low lighting, a shimmer or just this weird sweat of the creature even when it was cold temperatures. So that's pretty much how we achieved like a lot of silicone and clear coat and stuff.
Well, it looked amazing. I liked it a lot.
Thank you.
So, can I ask what the initial spark was that inspired the story, or if there was a single what if question or something more personal?
You know, a lot of some of the context is personal experience. I've sadly lost friends to suicide. I mean, we've all done it where we live in the past and we're always fighting to go back there, and we don't focus what's ahead of us, and you end up losing people or you lose yourself and all of that. And films that I really appreciate, like Signs with the messaging in there, Arrival with the time play there, and you got The Fourth Kind, which is more of like the horror, scary version of sci-fi, the sci-fi genre. I wanted to borrow those elements and combine them all into a film because I'm a big fan of sci-fi, but I like the thought-provoking version,
Sure.
instead of like, you know, Starship Troopers or,
Right.
something of that nature.
Sure.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I really wanted to draw from my own experiences of, dealing with like how people deal with loss, and these main
Right.
characters, they deal with it in their own ways. So that's where kind of the initial inception came from, and just sort
Okay.
of borrowing from the things that I really appreciated from those specific films.
Nice. How do you merge emotional storytelling with high concept sci-fi horror?
You have to keep it grounded as much as you can, as much as like there's fantastical elements surrounded by it, because that's everyday life. There's so much that happens in your life that you can't explain, and you still have to pay your bills tomorrow, and you still have your emotional draws. So what was important to me was to focus on the throughway line, which was letting go, like finding a way to let go of the past or let go of whatever that trauma is. And you kind of see that all the way through between Lucas's character, how he handled it, how Arthur handled it, and sadly how his wife handled it. There's like three ways out, and not all of them are great, you
Right.
know.
How did you go about casting and what qualities were you looking for in your actors?
Adam Hawley, who plays Lucas, he did a phenomenal job. I had been cinematographer for Demon Behind the Glass, which is another horror film, and he was the lead in that. And we always talked about doing a film together, and I said I would write a lead for him because he's such a versatile actor. And I really wanted to push his character as far as I could with different emotional range, anger, all of that. As far as Eden, actually, Lorelai Brown is my little cousin,
Okay.
and the way that worked out perfectly for me was she lives at my uncle's property because that's, her
Right.
father and her mother. And I was like, man, it would be great if you were interested in acting. And it turned out she was, and she was going to go to like an acting camp and stuff. So that ended up working out perfect because she did have similar traits, physical traits to Caitlin Westfall, who plays Ruth. And I
Right.
was like, this is like a match made in heaven.
Yeah.
And then as far as Ruth's character is going, I needed somebody who had an innocence about her that was almost childlike, and people could sympathize with her, but also you could find that correlation between the big reveal there at the end and say, oh, okay, I see what's going on here. And as far as the mother goes, Reese Ravencroft, who's a phenomenal actress. I've seen her in other indie films. She's based out of Texas, and she sent me her audition. And it was actually for Ruth's part.
Okay.
And I told her, I said, I don't think you're Ruth. I think Caitlin is, because I met Caitlin. And I said, but I really want you to play Evie's character. And man, she blew me away. And once I had that core group, and Tim O'Haran, who plays Arthur, he's been in so many films, and he has such a great look to him. And we've been friends for years. And I said, I'm gonna write you a part where you don't die, because every movie he's in, he dies. And I'm like,
Sure.
we're gonna work together, man. I'm gonna write a perfect part for you. So he was on board 100%. So I had my core group there, and one of the things I was looking for, especially for the child, is there's got to be a haunting presence about her face as well, for the more contrast stuff that she had to do that was more on a darker level. And she was just perfect. So that's kind of how I went about,
That's
finding
pretty
the
cool.
cast. Thank you.
And then for the child actor, how do you handle her being in a horror film without it like being too terrifying or anything like that?
Well, first you introduce her to the creature and say, "This is not a real person. It's gonna be fine." And I think what we had going for us too is like there was no real creature sound on set. You just have a
Okay.
performer going or something when they open their jaw. It seems silly in the moment, but the biggest challenge there for me dealing with a child actor, especially one who's never acted before, was you have to be careful about pressuring her too much and trying to get too much out of her that she doesn't know how to access whatever it is you're looking for, because that'll create frustration and they can fall apart easily. So I had to find the sweet spot and say, okay, this was perfectly what I needed. Let's move on, you know? So that's always a challenge when you're working with kids, especially ones who've never acted before. It's feeling them
Right.
out essentially.
Can you talk to me about the practical effects used in making Reset?
I knew right from the beginning I want to do everything we could to make all the effects in camera as much as possible and pepper in VFX to just add to it. So when we took that approach, the shotgun shots and stuff, those were all practical. We used blanks. Any of the portal lighting and stuff, those were actual lightings, actual lights on set, and we peppered in the visual effects and stuff. Levitation in the bedroom and stuff. Honestly, it's a silly concept if you look at it, but it worked well. We had her on a clear bin
Okay.
planked on her back, and I said, "Okay, this is enough where we can actually remove the bin and make it work," And even things like the clone effect with the light in the mouth, I bought these little balls of light from Amazon. There was like 1,000 of them,
Oh,
and
wow.
I had my actors just pop it in their mouth, and it worked beautifully.
Cool.
Stuff like that was very easy to sort of, MacGyver and figure out how to use.
And for there's a part where they use blood, like they spit
Mhm,
out blood. What did you use for the
mhm.
blood?
Honestly, I think it was grape juice or something, and I said, "Just put it in your mouth and, we'll keep it simple," and it actually worked out better than I thought it would. So,
Is it difficult wearing so many hats while filming? You're producer, writer, and director. Is that
mhm.
hard to manage?
At some point, I was running sound at the same time as well. I didn't have a sound guy the whole time. I looked very silly. I had like the sound pack, I had the headphones, I had the camera. I'm directing, I'm doing all this stuff. And it's stressful, but I do that on a regular basis. I own my own production company. I do commercials for TV and such, and I'm solo. I don't have a crew. And a lot of my experience over the years has conditioned me to be in that scenario and be calm and be concise about what I want and how to navigate things. So it's stressful when you run into a issue technically where you have to rely on yourself to figure it out. Like I'm not relying on a camera op crew and say, "Hey, what should we do?" Because I don't have the answer to that. There was so much self-discovery in what I was doing that when I did have help, I was very appreciative. But it's definitely doable. You just have to stay calm, and if you have a freak out moment, don't do it in front of anybody. Just step aside for a minute, you know, and take a deep breath, come back, and that's it. It should be fine.
How do you balance dialogue-driven scenes versus visual storytelling?
A lot of that has to do with, the trust with your cast. I love that I didn't have the responsibility of holding the hand of the actors. They just knew what I was looking for. And when it came to the visual part of everything, I mean, I knew how I wanted things to look and I knew how I wanted to tell a story through the lens. Very kinetic, I didn't think stationary shots were feasible for something we're trying to do because I wanted people to feel like they were there with these characters, they were suffering with them. So the balance was honestly it was easy because you have a good cast, you have a strong cast. So the rest is like, okay, I can just focus on the visuals now. And if I got to give you a little note because I'm looking for something specific, I can and not fall apart. So yeah,
Nice.
it was a good balance. Yeah.
Were there moments where actors brought something unexpected that changed the scene?
Yes. Lorelai, who plays Eden, surprised me many times. And sort of on the behind the scenes stuff, I remember overhearing her asking one of the actors, "Can you run lines with me?" And I was like, "How do you even know?" that's even a thing because you're not even an actress. You don't even do any of this, but she made some interesting choices that I didn't tell her to do. So if you remember the scene where she's playing with the dolls and it was like a memory, and I told her to say her line, she looked up and said her line. I was like, oh, that's an interesting choice. That was actually really like it was mysterious. It was like she was looking up to the sky, and it was like it was transcending time the way she did it. And I used that take. I didn't use any other take. I was like, that was a cool choice. And Reese, who plays Evie, she actually ad-libbed the line, "It doesn't matter how many of those things you kill, she's never coming back." Because she said, "Can I try something?" And I said, "Absolutely." And this is what I love about Reese is she asked me for a minute so she can get herself into them. I said, "Yeah, take your time, do what you got to do." We did the lines that were scripted, and then when she asked me to do that one thing, I mean, that made the trailer. Obviously, I was like, "We're
Right.
doing that." Like she just poured her heart out in that moment. I was like, "Oh,
Yeah, the
thank you."
emotion in that line. It was a
Yeah,
great line.
she's fantastic. Yeah.
What advice do you have for someone that wants to write and direct their own films?
Draw from real experiences. I think if you're going to write something, let it be a love letter to something in your life. Because if you try to cookie cutter something and you're trying to just I mean, look, to some degree, every filmmaker replicates something that they've seen. But if that's all you're going for, it's not going to have a soul, your film. And if you
Right.
want to direct it, at least see what your vision is. Don't just entirely depend on like discovering it as you go, because writing and directing has to work together well. But most importantly, if you're going to say something personal that can resonate with people, at least from a human standpoint. Yeah, you got this idea of, could it be aliens, could it be angels, could it be, is it religion or is it just sci-fi? That's really up to the audience. But the one big takeaway that you're supposed to get from the film is that, like, you got to let go sometimes. You just have to let go. Don't be selfish. If you're going to choose to suffer, you got to be able to face the demons that kind of come with that.
Right. It's funny to say to, have a soul for the film. One thing I was telling one of my co-hosts when I was talking to her about the film was that I felt that it was new, it was something different. It wasn't the same movie I've watched 1,000 times, which is what I enjoyed most about the movie. It was a fun night to sit down. I was like, I'm gonna sit down and just watch it to watch it,
Mm.
enjoy it. Then I'll take notes later. I was like, it's fun, it's new, and that's what I love about it.
Thank you so much. And the thing too is I kind of just designed it so it has to be watched more than one time, because you
Sure,
do miss a lot. There's a lot visually that you can pick out if you actually like pay attention. And a lot happens at once, so you're gonna miss something. So, for anybody who ever finds any confusion, it's like, hey, just go back and watch it. I promise you the answer is there.
that's awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah, I like to study films like that. So
Thank
that's
you.
pretty cool. All right, do you have a dream project you'd like to tackle next?
I'm actually juggling a couple of ideas. There's a part of me that wants to stay in the sci-fi realm, and then there's a part of me that wants to dabble in the action realm or combine them both. I'm trying to figure out what direction I want to go in. So there's been some discussions of what's next, and I'm really hoping. I really do like playing with the parallels of science fiction and even religion, because we all wonder, like, that's the biggest question of the film, right? That who could really answer that? It's really up to the
Right,
audience. Do you want to lean into the science fiction of it all, or do you want to lean into the religious aspect of it all? That's really up to you. I can't tell you what to do.
right,
But what I can tell you what to do is let go, like, move on. You have to. Otherwise, you're going to destroy yourself and all the people around you.
right.
So, I might revisit those topics maybe even more in depth or find a new way to explore those things. But yeah, as far as the dream project, it's like, hey, man, to some degree, I'm living the dream to be able to create a
Sure.
story and get it out there. So to me, I'm like, every film I make is a dream to me because it's
Yeah,
not easy, man. There's so many people struggling to make that happen. They're all like starving for money. I'm here to say, like, you don't need millions of dollars. You don't need $100,000. You can make it happen. Just be very open to learning, you know, all the little sections of making a film, whether it's audio, camera operation, editing, writing, directing, like learn all of it, learn a little bit of all of it. And then you can communicate the best with whoever you have closest to you and you can like make it happen. But, most importantly, it's like there is no like playbook on how to do it because you learn it. I mean, 99% of the time you're problem solving. So there's no like, the idiot's guide to filmmaking. It's like all you know is you got to have a camera, you got to have a crew and actors, and you got to have a story. The
Right.
rest is really entirely up to you. So, right now, all I could say is like every project I'm going to do is the dream because it's tough. It's so tough, especially with how many films are out there. You got to
Yeah.
find a way to stick out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, hell, I'm happy if somebody hates the film because
I get you.
I'm making them
Someone saw
think,
it.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, you
I get
watched
you.
it. Hey, you got to
Yeah.
find your audience, and if you hate it, great.
Right.
You
I've
know,
always said if a movie makes me hate it, it obviously did something right because it has so much emotion there that it's pulling
yeah.
out of me.
One
Yeah.
of the things I really appreciate about something Christopher Nolan said once that resonated with me. He was asked, "What do you say to the people who find your stories confusing?" He said, "Don't try to understand it, just feel it." And I said, "That is the perfect way to think about it because if you can't at least walk away from a film feeling something, I mean, I've watched films that were not great, but I have this guilty pleasure watching them again because I feel something for the character or the film makes me feel a certain way, so I have to watch it again. Even
Right.
though I can admittedly say it's not a great film,
Sure.
so that was one thread that he sort of pulled on that I was like, man, I can relate to that. That's an amazing way of looking at it. So just feel it, I guess, whatever it is. So
Is there anything I didn't ask or anything you want to share that I didn't go over?
No, I mean, we're very proud of the film, and we hope everybody likes it. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Sound like you did, and
Did yeah.
thank you very much. I appreciate it, and of course, thank you for having taken the time and having me on.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. So thank you
Thank
for
you.
being here.
Of
All right.
course.
Thank you, Insomniacs, for listening to our bonus episode where I had the privilege of interviewing Michael Yammine, writer, director, and producer of the new movie Reset. The movie is available on VOD, so go check it out. If any listeners have already seen Reset, please reach out and tell us what you thought. Joseph will be here for our next episode Monday, where we cover Event Horizon. So hope you listen to us again then. Bye.